You can view the video of this podcast on Jazz Cabbage's YouTube or Facebook pages. Jazz Cabbage Café, everybody. It is March 23rd, 2021.
And we ride on our substance, not on our technological bells and whistles around here. And so
it's kind of the
thank God
the
for
theme,
that.
You know, something's broken every week.
So Shelly's here. That's cool.
Hey,
Shelly
That
Shelly.
doesn't happen all the time, but it is
Hey.
happening today.
Yeah.
And Jim Salame is here. Colin McDougall let me know that he was going to be a few minutes late. And
Shame on him.
of course, Deborah Young is here, and Rick Thompson is here.
Colin and I realized last week that we were in a comedy songwriting class together.
How cool. When was that?
That's
Or it's
pretty
coming
funny.
up?
Sounds like a collab.
We showed up for our class at 7 p.m. last Tuesday night.
Uh-huh.
And you know, it's our little Planet Ant Zoom class, and he's in there. It's
That is
great.
so cool.
And that's a great
Yay.
group of people to be doing
Yeah.
that with, too.
Sure is.
Yeah.
Just to round out the introduction, so our host, Jamie Lowell, is the one
Right on.
speaking. Yay.
So I want to go over a couple things here and then begin, getting into kind of our topic of Leonard Peltier, which I'm excited to get into, although ultimately it's a tragic account of a miscarriage of justice that is extreme. But want to make sure we get to a couple things because we're going to have some really great guests coming on, and we're really going to get into that. Hash Bash, virtual Hash Bash is coming up April 3rd. What's the address for that, Jim and/or Rick?
Twitch.tv/A2hashbash.
Right on.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have a whole show dedicated to this next week, and a lot of the people who are going to be participants. And we'll talk about the bigger picture of what's going on campus still and all that kind of stuff, just to give a full view of what's happening on that historic weekend coming up. But it's the online production is going to be awesome, and really looking forward to that. Just got confirmation today that Darren McCarty is going to be hanging out with us in the studio for that time and doing a live presentation and maybe reading some comments and whatever, so it'll be kind of fun to have that going on too.
Are y'all going to be in Mark Allen's studio or
Yes.
somewhere else?
Nope,
Oh, you are
there.
going to be there.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Who else is going to be there? Can I come there?
So there's going to be about 30 people there in and out, and we're just
Oh, shoot.
joined by Malcolm MacKinnon. But I want to go through just a couple things here real quick. And I really want to thank Botanical Company because this week I was able to participate in a few things I really like to do and feel as though some progress was made. And that includes, I was in on a meeting with the help of Robin Schneider from the Michigan Cannabis Industries Association, in which a serious discussion of getting a lawmaker to introduce a bill to deschedule cannabis from our state's controlled substances list was had. And that seems promising, at least to move the conversation forward. And the more we talk about it and educate people on this, the more support we seem to get. So I was just really happy for that. And also brought in a new program that was started by Josie Scoggin and Sons and Daughters United and Ryan Basor on Redemption Canna. And that is called the Michigan Expungement Program. And it is to help people take advantage of the revolutionary package of expungement bills that passed last session, and work with lawyers and others and help them through the process and try to get some people some help with getting stuff off their records so they can move forward with some jobs and loans and whatever else gets impeded, because of past discretions and so forth. And particularly if it has to do with cannabis, we definitely don't want to see people hampered for that.
Well, of course, the descheduling has been one of your pet projects too. I know we're joined right now by Reverend Stephen Thompson as well.
Nice. And so I just really want to thank the Botanical Company. They give me a lot of room and support to work on these projects because they also believe in the grassroots side of stuff and the advocacy side of stuff. And so much thanks to everybody at the Botanical Company. It's a great team. Of course, Tiffany Coleman's been working with me too on some other great projects, such as the harm reduction project that's in conjunction with some researchers from Wayne State University and the sociology department, in which ultimately getting cannabis to people to use instead of opiates as an exit therapy. And I can relate because that's one of the testimonials I have with cannabis for alcohol and opiates. So with that, I'm really excited about this show. I'm glad that Malcolm's joining us a little bit early here, but we're going to get rolling on this in a few minutes. But I kind of want to talk about it at first because I'm curious what people's current connection. We're gonna have a really good overview by the end of today's discussion of what led up to the incidents in Ogala. As I was checking out a documentary that was included, I'm not sure produced by or orated by Robert Redford, and lays out a lot of the facts. It attempts to be balanced, but as balanced as you want to view these facts, it clearly points to there's a problem with this, with the process that led to this incarceration. So we're going to learn about this kind of stuff. But when I first kind of picked up on it, I came into the cannabis world, well over a decade ago, and Gersh Avery was working with this guy who was a cancer patient. He has since passed, unfortunately, named Swampy. His nickname was Swampy. And he had developed a strain in tribute to Leonard Peltier called Free Leonard. And if I remember correctly, it was like Hawaiian and Romulan and something else crossed with each other. And it was really good whenever it was around. It seems to not be on the scene.
Michigan unique strain. It sure was.
And I definitely, without knowing the details or the, a lot of the facts, realized that this thing was being viewed as just a tremendous miscarriage of justice by a lot of people. And I've learned a little bit more about it, but I am really interested to get into this a little bit deeper. And I just wonder what other people's, general connection is to this before we start really getting down to the facts and stuff like that. Rick, what's your connection to this, or what's your pre-knowledge of this story?
Well, when I was in high school in the early 80s, I was very politically active, and Leonard Peltier's story just barely made a blip on my radar. It was only when I was in after the 2000s was I really made aware. And when I went back to look at it, I felt bad because it seemed as if, this is just symptomatic of a lot of things that happened to Native Americans during the 1970s. If you were to take a lot of the factors away from this, Leonard could have still ended up in jail because they did whatever they wanted to Native peoples. They treated their lands as if they weren't sovereign states, and there was no justice for them. And now that there's unfortunately deaths associated with his case, it makes it even more difficult for us to get any kind of a reasonable reevaluation of the circumstance. But when I look at this is just one example of decades and decades of mistreatment of Native American peoples. And as much as I want to look at Leonard Peltier's case as an individual example of a real miscarriage of justice, I look at it as an emblem of failure on the part of us as Caucasian Americans to do more. I really do. Now, I'll throw it to Deborah Young, and then we'll try and go around the horn and get everybody. But Deb.
Well, I mean, if specifically on the case itself, I don't know a whole lot. I remember when it happened. I remember, some details, but I just got done reading a book called This Tender Land, and it's about how Indian children were taken from families and placed into boarding residential schools to knock the Indian out of them. And I mean, that's where the shit really goes back to. The federal, that was all sponsored by the federal government. I mean, stealing children from families and trying to change their culture.
Trying to eliminate that culture.
Right. Trying to just wipe it out. They weren't allowed to speak their native languages. They were, it was really a horrible thing. And these kids were treated just unbelievably bad. I mean, tortured, killed, some of them killed. I mean, it was just a horrible thing. I just read this book over the weekend. The atrocities that white America, or not just white America, just America has thrown on the world. It's just amazing if you go through history, the different groups that we have just fucked with. It's just crazy. It's how do you even justify it, even to say, oh, it was a different time? What do you mean it was a different time? I mean, we're talking about dealing with human beings. How different is a time? I mean, come on.
And the agreement that we made with the Native American peoples a long time ago, that still was regardless of time. The constitutionality of things, that exists regardless of the times. There are so many different ways in which this.
Yeah, I mean, right is right no matter what the times are. Wrong is wrong. I mean, and genocide. I mean, this genocide is what happened with the Native Americans here in this country. That's genocide. Well, they were almost totally wiped out. I mean, come on. It's very sad.
Jim Salame, you're very active in Ann Arbor politics, and you've been around the world. You've been with Native Indigenous persons in many different nations. What's your opinion about what we're discussing here today?
Well, I don't know enough about Leonard's case myself, but I echo a lot of the things that Deb was saying, just about rights and injustices upon indigenous groups here in the United States. You see a different type of segregation going on, maybe in places I visited, like Peru, when it comes to some of the indigenous groups and how they're just separate from the rest of society. But here, it's a little bit of the same. But I don't know enough about Leonard's situation to speak on it, so I'm really interested to know more today.
Yeah, in the 80s, I was focused a lot on apartheid in South Africa and some of the issues that were going on there in Namibia and which used to be the South Africa People's Republic.
Have you read Mark Montalbani's books, Rick?
I've not. No, I've not.
Okay, next time we get together, let me throw you a
Please do.
couple of those. Yeah.
Shelley, are you available to comment on this? I'm trying to get our regulars in before we go to Malcolm.
Yeah, it's pretty windy outside. I don't know this case, but I mean, if we're commenting on, white people fucking up criminal justice to serve white people, I'm familiar with that. But yeah, I will back off just because I don't know much about the case. I will listen.
Thank you, Shelley. And Reverend Stephen Thompson, thank you so much for joining us. It's been the second week in a row, and we're blessed to have you. You've been listening to the conversation, and you've been doing democratic work for a long time. We know a lot of Native American persons in the Northern Michigan area. I'm sure you have a strong opinion about this one way or another.
I have a very strong opinion about it. For 23 years, I would travel every Labor Day weekend and Memorial Day weekend back down to Columbus, Ohio, and run the public kitchen for the Columbus, Ohio Native American Indian Center, and also the food kitchen for the dancers and singers and what have you. I did that for 23 years, and during that 23 years, I learned about a lot about my own Native American heritage. I also got the privilege of meeting Dennis Banks and Russell Means in person. They came at various times to the powwow, and got some of the feedback from them on this. And I was always told that Leonard, while he knew who shot the two FBI policemen, it wasn't him himself that shot them, but he wasn't willing to turn over on his brothers. And for this, he has suffered for over 40 years. He's somebody's father. He's somebody's grandfather. He should have been released a long time ago, to be able to go back to his family and enjoy what remaining years he's got. And for that reason, I invited Oklahoma AIM, American Indian Movement out in Oklahoma, who our daughter Mary is the head of. I invited them to view this program today because we have been working so hard for all this time now to get Leonard out of prison and back to his family. And it could all be done with the magic stroke of our now President Biden's pen, and the man could go home to his family. The Uprising in 1972 was simply it happened because Native American people were being treated so badly and so poorly by even their own people out there in the Dakotas at that time. And so it was inevitable that it was going to happen. And it's like the United States government has never forgiven the Lakota people for Custer's death and their ultimate win back in the 1800s. And they seem to be systematically trying to wipe out this nation, because right after the Wounded Knee Uprising, there were several young girls, 13 and 14, being systematically sterilized, Native American girls being systematically sterilized, trying to kill out the Lakota nation. And this just should not be. But until we as visitors on their land, you know, when this means something to us and we take up a stand for them and work right beside of them, he's going to continue to be overlooked and just rot away there in prison. And I just won't accept that.
When I was a student at Northern Michigan University up in Marquette in the Upper Peninsula, I had some friends that were Canadians that were going to that university, and they were Native American. And we mentioned something about one of the tribes down here, and they sort of scoffed and said, "We come from a place where they didn't break their promises to us. We can hunt from the morning to the evening." Says
They didn't break
freedom to
their
run our land.
promises to us, but every promise that was ever made by the United States government has been broken to them.
Yep. The Canadians did it differently, and it could have been done differently here too. I'm very pleased to give a nice warm Jazz Cabbage Cafe welcome to Malcolm MacKinnon. Malcolm, of course, has been a longtime editor of the High Times magazine, but so many more things. And when it comes to Native American issues, his photography is stunning. His breadth of knowledge is unsurpassed as far as I know. And what a great guy. And thank you for joining us again, Malcolm.
My pleasure. Thank you. It's great to be here. I just wanted to mention to the Reverend there that I don't know if Canada did things so differently. I mean, there are tremendous problems up in Canada as far as the First Nations are concerned, and they aren't going away. Trudeau is not very sympathetic toward Indian issues. So that's just like to correct that right away. Canada is no paradise for the Native American, for First Nations up there.
Thank you.
Anyway, glad to be here. As I said, as he said before, I've been involved with Native American issues for 30 years, and I've met all the major players from Dennis Banks to Russell Means, interviewed them, Clyde Bellecourt, the Bellecourt brothers, Winona LaDuke, and I visited Leonard Peltier in prison in 2016. We ran an article in High Times magazine in the hopes of getting him pardoned, drawing more attention to his case. Unfortunately, President Obama did not pardon him, as did none of the previous presidents. There was a lot of hope that Clinton might pardon him, but he didn't. There was not really a lot of hope that George Bush would, and there was no hope at all that Donald Trump would. But the facts are this: he's been in prison now for 43 years. He's serving 2 life sentences for the murder of 2 FBI agents. He is in a maximum security prison. He has never left a maximum security prison. He's down in Coleman, Florida, as far away from his homeland as he could possibly be in the United States. And that was the case when he was in Leavenworth. It was the same case when he was up in the Pennsylvania prison. Here are the facts. In the American movement, the American Indian movement rose in the 1960s, and it was a great inspiration to Native Americans. It was a call to reclaim the rights that they had lost. It was to call attention to the fact that the United States government has broken nearly every single treaty that they've ever signed, and so this was a great inspiration for Native Americans in the 60s. The American Indian movement galvanized Native Americans, but it also caused a lot of concern on the part of the government. In 1973, on the Pine Ridge Reservation, the Wounded Knee Uprising took place. It was a siege against the American Indian movement took over the town of Wounded Knee, especially Wounded Knee, to draw attention to the fact that conditions were so horrible on the Pine Ridge Reservation and elsewhere in the United States. They chose Wounded Knee because it's the site of the 1890 massacre. So where 300 or more Native American Lakota women and children and men were slaughtered by the United States government as they tried to surrender. So there's a lot of history going on here. There's a lot of, what would you call it, historical PTSD, if you will. So in 1973, they took over the Wounded Knee with a 71-day standoff with the government. I think 3 Indians were killed in that standoff. In the end, when the siege was broken, all the charges were dropped against the Indians because of prosecutorial misconduct. Then in 1975, in a state of extreme tension in the Pine Ridge Reservation, when the tribal government had hired basically paramilitary squad to wage war against traditionals and the people who opposed the tribal government. In this time of extreme tension in 1975, when the FBI was present on the reservation at all times, the American and Indian had moved in to help and assist the people who were under siege. You have to understand, at this time in 1975, Pine Ridge had the highest murder rate per capita in the country, and 70 people killed in 1 year. So this was an extremely violent time. So the American Indian movement arrived at the reservation to help and protect the people who were at risk. And on June 26, 1975, two FBI agents rolled up on the Jumping Bull compound, which is in Ogala, part of the Pine Ridge Reservation. They were chasing a red van, which is a little bit dubious because they changed their story on that as well. But anyway, they rolled up on the reservation. They rolled up on the Jumping Bull compound. Leonard Peltier and a number of other Indians from the age of 12 on to 35, 40 years old were all camping along the creek there. Suddenly, the FBI agents rolled up. They did not announce themselves as FBI agents. Suddenly, gunfire broke out. The Indians believed that they were under attack. They did not know that these were FBI agents. In the shootout, the two FBI agents were killed. Following that, two of the Indians were tried and acquitted on self-defense grounds. Leonard Peltier, meanwhile, was on the run. He was captured in Canada in February of 1976. He was put on trial. The government basically falsified evidence, coerced witnesses, and changed ballistic reports in order to convict Leonard Peltier. Now, Leonard Peltier, this is his statement. If I could, I'd like to read what he wrote last year. This is on the anniversary of the shootout. June 26 marks 41 years since the long summer day when 3 young men were killed at the home of the Jumping Bull family near Ogala during a firefight in which I and dozens of others participated. While I did not shoot and therefore did not kill FBI agents Ronald Williams and Jack Kohler, I nevertheless have great remorse for the loss of their young lives, the loss of my friend Joe Stuntz, an Indian who was killed by the FBI, and for the grieving of their loved ones. I would guess that, like me, many of my brothers and sisters who were there that day wish that somehow they could have done something to change what happened and avoid the tragic outcome of the shootout. This is not something I've thought about casually and then moved on. It's something I think about every day. As I look back, I remember the expressions of both fear and courage on the faces of my brothers and sisters as we were being attacked. We thought we were going to be killed. We defended our elders and children as they scattered for protection and to escape. Native people have experienced such assaults for centuries, and the historical trauma of the generations was carried by the people that day. So that's Leonard's explanation of what happened. And last year, right before, he was, his release was, before his pardon was denied once again, one of the U.S. attorneys who had been a prosecutor in the case said, "It is time to let him go. We are doing nothing but wasting tax dollars." The FBI has been a complete opponent of any release of Leonard Peltier. In fact, in December of 2000, they turned out in force around the White House 2,000 agents, former agents, to protest any release of Leonard Peltier. This is unprecedented, where a police force comes out and protests the law, protests a possible pardon. That happened in 2000. So everybody seems to be afraid of the FBI backlash. The FBI mishandled the case. The FBI acted incorrectly, and the FBI is at fault for this. But because 2 of their own were killed tragically, they want to get their man, and their man was Leonard Peltier.
Certainly seems like a classic case of government gone bad and then trying to cover it up and finding someone who, in common vernacular, is a patsy. Where they can put everything on them, and therefore they get to hang 2 plaques on the wall of deceased FBI agents and treat them with reverence, as opposed to looking into it and finding out maybe they were deficient in the way that they did their job. They didn't announce who they were, and therefore sort of got themselves killed.
Right. Well, the thing is, Leonard, I visited him in prison, as I say, back in 2016. He's in a remarkably good spirits. Basically, all he wants is spend the rest of his days with his family and maybe teach the little ones. This is what he talks about. He's seen none of that for 43 years. He's become a martyr. And if you look at how many people support his release, from the Dalai Lama, Nelson Mandela, Jesse Jackson, the United Nations, the Association of Lawyers, they're all calling for his release. And if you go on whoisleonardpeltier.info, you can read the complete list of people who support his release from prison. This is one of the real tragedies of American justice. It truly is. Oh, I'm glad to see Chauncey is Leonard's son, and he's joined us. It looks as though he's here.
Chauncey's joining us by telephone only. He doesn't have video, it seems. And Chauncey,
Welcome nonetheless, though, Chauncey. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for supporting Leonard. I always like to start out by thanking the supporters for Leonard. A lot of you guys help keep him strong on this journey he's on, and your guys' support is what's kept a lot of supporters going. So I always like to start out by thanking the supporters. I always thank the supporters. I support anybody that supports Leonard, you know.
So Chauncey, where do things stand now? Is there any chance that Biden might pardon him? Is there movement in that direction at all?
Well, again, you know, a lot of people, me and the family had a meeting with his attorney, Kevin Sharp, and again, he's asking for everybody to write the White House in support of Leonard clemency, to keep it going. I mean, a lot of people, when I was working with the committee and I was out campaigning, a lot of people out there, people don't realize a lot of people don't have computers. A lot of people would say, well, I thought he was free. Just numerous things. And so when I was out there, I was updating a lot of people. And that's what Kevin Sharp, his attorneys wanting, is us to proceed in calling the White House, writing letters. I know a lot of people get discouraged because they've been doing that for years, but unfortunately that don't roll over with each president. We have to start over every time.
Right.
So it's a lot of work, but that's what he's asking people to do. And those were actually Kevin's suggestions on what we do to support Leonard.
Right. And Peter Clark, who's not with us today, who's part of the Defense Committee as well, encourages everybody to call their congressman, to put pressure on these people. I mean, this is a travesty. So, that's part of it. Also, you can support Leonard by going to whoisleonardpeltier.info and purchase one of his paintings. He's become an outstanding painter behind bars. You can check out his artwork all over the internet. Just Google Leonard Peltier artwork, and you can find out what's available. And it really is remarkable stuff. And this money, of course, goes towards his defense fund as well. Indeed, it does.
well,
So-
Malcolm, you're doing a great job. Go ahead.
Yeah, and when you say like this evidence was manufactured and stuff like that, what is the evidence manufactured or not?
Number one, let's start with the first trial. Okay, the first trial, Bob Robideau and Dino Butler were acquitted on self-defense because of self-defense. When Leonard was tried, the fact that they were acquitted was not allowed into evidence. The fact that two other people who were present at the same shootout and who also were not guilty of the killing of the agents were acquitted because of self-defense, because the jury understood that the Indians felt they were under attack. They had no idea that they were FBI agents. They thought they were goons, guardians of the Ogala Nation, the paramilitary squad that the president of the tribe, Dick Wilson, had hired at that point in time to enforce his rules on the reservation and to discourage AIM activity. So, lost my train of thought there. Yeah, so that
you're starting with the fact that
starting there
right.
when they denied the fact that denied the jury to hear the fact that these two other people had been acquitted. They coerced witnesses. They got a woman named Myrtle Poorbear, who was a very, very poor intelligence, a very, very low IQ obviously mentally deficient, and they coerced her testimony against Leonard. And it was completely discounted by prosecutors. But the judge's conduct in the trial was disgraceful. He disallowed a lot of evidence, allowed a lot of motions that were not allowed in the first trial. The ballistics report was absolutely tampered with. There is evidence to that effect. And if I can just find here, just one notice right here. Federal agents made false statements and affidavits, coerced witness statements, and deliberately withheld crucial ballistics reports. A prosecutor eventually admitted in court that the U.S. Attorney's Office can't prove who shot the agents, and claimed that Peltier was guilty of aiding and abetting in the shooting. Now, he didn't go there he didn't go to Pine Ridge with the intention of killing anybody. He was trying to protect his people. That is the defense. We're not aware these were the FBI agents. That's been clear from the beginning. But as I said, they wanted Leonard Peltier to suffer. Somebody had to pay. Now, as the Reverend mentioned earlier, the Indians who were present, Robideau has passed on, Dina Butler's still alive, but they know who killed the agents. And the fact is, those two agents were killed at point blank range. They were fired upon, and once again, even at that point, it wasn't clear that they were agents when they were killed, but somebody did shoot them up close. All right, it was not Leonard Peltier. The fact is, the Indians know who that person was, but they're not going to give up one of their brothers. They're not going to give, because what good would that do? Now, the fact is, aiding and abetting, that denies the whole case, the whole self-defense case completely. Aiding and abetting. Everybody was working together to defend themselves on that morning.
It certainly seems like that's a selective use of evidence. You can understand why the FBI would resist having this case reopened. Certainly, it would point to a lot of malfeasance, perhaps even collusion between the prosecution and the FBI itself that would go beyond courts. It looks like we've been joined by Jean. Is that correct?
Hey. Oh, great, Jean. Now, Jean, I've known for a few years now. She was there she came with me down to Florida to visit Leonard in jail. And she was there on the morning of the shootout. She was 14 years old at the time. Jean, tell us what you experienced.
Basically, I'd just like to introduce myself. My name is Jean Roach. I'm from the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. I've been a member of American Indian Movement lifelong, and that started with my mother. And that's how we knew Leonard, was through her. Me and my little brother was staying there at the Jumping Bulls place. And you got to kind of know the whole story, because at the time was a torrid time, and they call it the Reign of Terror. Okay, so during this Reign of Terror, which started probably way back when we first got put on these places, these reservations, really, I mean, we've been experiencing this since first contact. There's a long history before Leonard was targeted, and before he went to prison. We've had history of prisoners since, first contact, Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, and most of them were killed or murdered while they were in custody. So it's not really a new news that he's still in there, because the United States government has continued this attack on our people. And for whatever reasons they desire, last few years ago was for water. Before that was for natural resources. The war continues on and on. And back then, when they had this reign of terror, several hundred people were being attacked by United States government-backed goon squads, vigilante groups. So part of our reason being in Ogala invited Leonard and them, actually, I was just a teenager then, but was to protect the the people that believed in our ways of life, or ceremonies, or lifestyle. So we have to ask for security to pray. You know, there's a lot of violence going on in the area. And this community just happened to be Ogala, pulling away from the government control, which was Dick Wilson, who controlled the goon squads, who actually hated anybody that was not complying to become part of the big melting pot. And we chose to pick our survival through our spiritual ways. So when you know that, then you understand how we consider him and why we consider him a prisoner of war. And everything they've done in their power to keep him in there, they've done it. Even though they've manufactured evidence, threatened witnesses with death, they've killed people, they're responsible for a lot of terror. And if that word comes out, which they're scared of, or they don't care about, that's why they keep Leonard in there. But we're fighting to keep him out because he's an elder. You have an elder in prison that we've taken his case to United Nations several times for violations against human rights, constitutional rights, tribal rights, you name it. You know, we've got that laws behind us as a nation. So we're not just talking about the FBI stumbling onto a land. They actually had some sort of plan in place at the same time. Thousands of acres of land were taken over by the United States government. And we feel like Peltier's case, or when they attacked the camp, was a diversion tactic by them to throw that, you know, elsewhere, which has always happened. If you look at our history, not
Gene,
the one we wrote, but the one we tell. This is real common.
I'm sorry, Gene. Tell us what was it like that morning? What were you doing in the morning when all of a sudden the shooting broke out? How did it happen, and what was your feeling at the time?
Well, basically, like I say, the reign of terror. So you always have to be on the lookout. Nobody knew who those people were in those cars because they were unmarked. People were drive-bying different residents that were known to pray with the sweat lodge, with our pipe. So we were always under attack. So we always had to be on the lookout. It was more the law of the gun. And the feds didn't have no reason to be there. They take the 10 top crimes as the reasons why they go on the reservation, but no. And they said they were serving a warrant for Jimmy Eagle who had stolen a pair of cowboy boots. Hello, that's not a 10 top crime to be on the reservation for. So there's some proof there that this thing has been well thought out. Let's not forget our brother Joe Stuntz, who was killed there and never had no justice, not even an inquiry into his murder. And neither had the over 60 people that were murdered between the Wounded Knee 1973 takeover and the 1975 Ogala firefight. I'm sorry. I get kind of lost in that, but you know, and it was scary at that time. You know, if you broke down on the road, what are the chances are that the goon squad member would drive by and start shooting at you? That chance was at least probably 80, 90%. Or you're lucky if somebody that was not connected to the goon squad would help you. So that was just like the way it was on that reservation.
So Gene, you mentioned in the morning that you were there in the river to pray, and that in order to safely pray, you needed to have security. Is that correct?
That's how it was for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole reservation. If they wanted to have a sweat lodge, they need security to protect while they pray.
Wow.
So the Jumping Bulls, see, they just celebrated, Grandma and Grandpa Jumping Bull just celebrated their 50th anniversary, wedding anniversary, right? And so we were there helping. And one thing that we were stereotyped as militant guerrilla welfare, guerrillas, whatever. Anyway, And when I heard that, like from the news, I'm like, who are they talking about? You know, we're just a people, we're common people. You know, we survive every day. You know, who knows what the next meal will be. But for us, we were taken care of by the people of the community. So there was a surrounded effort for us to be there. It made them feel safe as they pulled away from that tightness of the tribal government at the time, who was Dick Wilson, who initiated the goon squads and the vigilantes, and they were actually given guns and ammunition by the United States government to fight the American Indian movement during the Wounded Knee takeover in 1973. This is afterwards, and that time was like, one of my good friends I used to go to school with was ran over on the reservation because her family was known to be AIM supporters, you know. So that's what kind of life that we had to survive in.
Right.
So when the grandma and grandpa had their anniversary, they needed that security. And we weren't only security, we were the maids. We were the dishwashers, the cooks. We built gardens. I mean, we were just the people, helping the people. So we helped them celebrate, and it was a big powwow. We built a big old arbor, you know, the whole community. So that's the kind of life that we're living, riding horses. I was a city girl, you know. That was my first time on the reservation, me and my little brother. He was 11. So that morning when the shootout happened, when I heard the gunshots, they were kind of common, but then not really, because they heard a whole horde of them, you know. And I was helping Joe's stunts. One of our mufflers fell off the car a couple of days before, and he fixed it, but burned his arm. So I was helping him, you know, put a bandage on it and cooking. So after that, it's the last time I seen him. And nobody, you know, he got shot up there. And as far as the stereotyping of us in the very beginning of being well-trained militants that escaped, we actually escaped this firefight, you know. Most of us were under the age of 18. There's only like maybe Dino, Bob, and Leonard that were the older, you know, the older guys. The rest of us were all kids.
That's the thing, that the government's always tried to make it out like they were a heavily armed paramilitary squad fighting the FBI. And these were kids. These were people who were just trying to pray, who were trying to get along, you know? So this is just a real misconception here on the part of what happened that day.
Yeah. Yeah, so exactly. And that's the same thing they did with Leonard. When Bob and Dino went to, they were the first co-defendants, 4 people were charged. When they went to court in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, they got a judge that was not used to railroading Indians or making damn sure they get to prison. He believed in fairness, and so did his jury. So they were open to, they were open to hear a story, you know, a reality, not the cowboy Indian stuff or the FBI show on TV that a lot of people could not believe that, you know, oh, what, the FBI is acting like this. I'm like, hell yeah, they were, you know. They were like the monster, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And the way they treated people, you know, it's just, they talked like we were the worst and they were actually the culprits. You know, breaking down people's houses, stopping people, harassing them, tying them up to chairs like they did some of the guys that were with us, threatened their families. It just goes on and on, their behavior. So they went to court in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. This evidence was brought up in court, how they manipulated and they changed the law and they did whatever they wanted to get an eye for an eye for those agents. And they didn't care who it was. And they proved it even more when they sent signed affidavits to Canada, which is another international law that they broke by lying to the Canadian government. Nobody has to account for that. They had Leonard Peltier extradited where he was caught at in Canada based on lies. 3 fabricated testimony statements by Myrtle Pourbear. And who's Myrtle Pourbear? We don't know. We never heard of her in our life. but supposedly she was Leonard Peltier's girlfriend. And we say, do you know Myrtle? I'm like, no, I never heard of her. You know, poor thing, they abused her, you know. She might have been like, I don't really know her. And I met her at the next trial when Leonard went to trial in Fargo. But back in Cedar Rapids, when Leonard and Bob were acquitted on the basis of self-defense, that the FBI misconduct was a major issue of why they were acquitted, the way they conducted themselves. I mean, it was just like, you know, the truth came out. And so that was one of the first rulings that Benson did in Leonard Peltier's trial in Fargo, North Dakota, was to ban any type of police misconduct.
Right.
How do you do that? That's not fair, too.
No.
And he also banned Myrtle Poorbear, who was the eyewitness that went to Canada to the Canadian government, or they sent her affidavits as an eyewitness so Canada would extradite him.
Right.
So they started messing up in the very beginning, you know.
Now, Chauncey, have you spoken to your dad recently?
No, it's been about 3 years.
Really?
3 or 4 years, yeah.
Why so
Yeah.
long?
Well, I just kind of got back to Oregon. I was working with the Defense Committee. I was pretty much on the go quite a bit there for about 3 years. And, you know, I'm 55 years old. I still support my father. I still do a lot of work behind the scenes. If you've seen that Amnesty International, Peter Clark, and me and Kathy got that support letter from Deb Holland.
Right.
I was involved in doing the art violation up in Washington.
Right.
I do a little work on my own. Just, you know, I'm just it's what I do. You know, I was volunteering in the prisons for about 5 years. Still educate kids. I'll go to schools and talk about Leonard and keep a lot of the story, Leonard's case going. You know, like you say, though, there's still 78,000 documents withheld from Leonard's case. There's, you know, the federal guidelines before in the 80s, before Leonard was convicted, said that he was due to be released after so many years.
Right.
His age said that as an elder and stuff, he should be released. People don't realize that they're still violating Leonard's rights today.
Yeah.
You know, just 45 years ago with the art and stuff they did, violated him on a few years back. They're still violating him. You know, if they would go by their own law and their own rules, Leonard would be at home.
He wouldn't be in a he wouldn't be in a maximum security. You're right.
Yeah, I still support Leonard. Like I say, I'll go to schools and talk and support him. Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I lost tears. Okay, now can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
You're here.
And how old is Leonard, by the way?
He's 76 years old. He'll be 77 in September.
Why are we keeping this guy?
Yeah. Here's the funny thing about
Nonsense.
the presidential pardons are a complete joke. Now let's go back to 1857. Remember Brigham Young, the head of the Mormons? Well, he, you know, they were very, very concerned that he was going to start a theocracy out there in Utah. So James Buchanan, the president at that time, assigned the army to go out there and fight them. There was a year-long standoff, and during that year-long standoff, the Mormons massacred 100 people of a wagon train on the orders of Brigham Young. He was pardoned. You have Mark Rich pardoned by Bill Clinton, one of the biggest scoundrels in America. He was on the FBI's most wanted list. He dealt with foreign hostile countries. He was pardoned. And of course, how can we forget the Bogdanovich, what the hell, the guy from Chicago? You know, he tried to sell a U.S. Senate seat. He was pardoned. All right. We have these Ray Caruth, the NFL guy who killed his wife and his unborn daughter. He's been released from prison. It's insane. This man was trying to protect his people. I mean, seriously, there was a case, I remember 2 years back in the 70s, there was a drug dealer William Kunstler defended him. The police broke into his apartment, 6 of them, and he shot 6 policemen. But William Kunstler argued he had no idea they were police because they didn't announce themselves. He was defending himself in his own home. He was not, he was acquitted. And so here we are with the same, but much different, very similar, well, not similar, but it's the same case when you get down to it. They had no idea.
Yeah, except for Leonard's case is stronger because there's no evidence. I mean, the other guy admits to shooting the people. He just said he didn't know who they are.
That's right. Gene, have you spoken to Leonard lately?
Yeah, I talked to him right before the pandemic, but I emailed with him.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, right now we're trying to get, of course, the medical stuff and get him transferred. You know, we were all, I don't know, I never did. I feel like we're barking up the tree with the pardons and clemencies because they just tend to walk over him. But I don't know, you never know, because my sister was granted clemency from Trump, and that, I mean, that was just a surprise. We're like, wow.
Your sister? What?
Yes.
Same event or something different?
No, she was in there for drugs, and she was serving a 30-year sentence. But she got pardoned by Trump, and you know, and she was pretty much set up too. I mean, Rapid City, South Dakota, we call it racist city. You know, it's a deep north, really.
It is true.
And we have so many of our people in prisons, and you know, with the federal guidelines, you know, when anything happens on the reservation, there's way harsher sentences than a state. So she was federal. Leonard's a federal case. So, you know,
what's the alternative then, Gene? If you say that you're barking up the wrong tree and you think that they may just be useless, what is the alternative?
Really, we're hoping more on the international courts. I mean, if you look at United States government, they should be taking the court for genocide, continued genocide. You know, not only for us as Native people within its land. I don't know, it's just that every time we try, you know, we're hoping maybe, you know, the new president and the way he's structuring his different people, Dev Havlin and all that, yeah, maybe there's a chance. I don't know. I thought Obama would be the chance because he was a constitutional lawyer, right. You know?
Right.
So I don't know what's holding it up or what kind of gag order, but I do know that the Retired Police Association has a lot to do with it. When we had, when Clinton was going out, we had like, it must have been close to 20,000 people in Manhattan marching for Leonard Peltier's freedom. And then down in DC, they had like maybe 500 of the retired associations police picketing against Leonard Peltier, telling him not to let him out. And that's just really sad that those few that probably don't know anything about the case got a lot of coverage on the, you know, national news when 20,000 people in Manhattan didn't hardly make a mark.
Right. Right.
So your question is an open question. How are we going to decide? We had over 32 members of Congress and the Senate at one time that wanted him released way back in the earlier, I think maybe in the 1980s. We've had so many people step up for him, you know, different big name people. But I don't know if you read the law too, the law is real pretty straightforward. You know, the right. Government changed their theories, you know, on the case, and they also changed what he was, you know, convicted of to aiding and abetting. Now, who is he aiding and abetting? Because nobody has been convicted of murdering these police according to the charges.
You know, it sounded
he had
like
to aid and abet somebody, right?
Right.
So who is that person?
So it sounds like from you know, the facts that are being discussed here that he was like down to the last person that could really pin all this stuff on. The other The pool of people were very young, as you said. And they had 4 adults at one point. Two were acquitted. Maybe I missed it, but what's the
He was
third?
Jimmy Eagle. He was the reason
Oh,
why the cops went over there looking for cowboy boots. Okay.
Right.
We have so many violations of our treaty. The Lakota Nation has an 1868 treaty that they've been ignoring since almost gold was discovered.
Right.
And we lay a lot of claim and we still haven't forgotten about it.
Right.
So they've broken a lot of laws, including our treaty.
Right. The thing is, remember, the entire Black Hills was ceded to the Lakota in the 1868 treaty. All the people in the Black Hills are living there illegally.
Yeah, everything west of the Missouri River or the guidelines are real specific in the treaty, going by water, and then we have the south goes all the way down into Nebraska, which I think is the Platte River, and then north of us is way up into North Dakota. Parts of Montana and Wyoming are part of that treaty.
Right.
Of the 1868, but if we go back a little further, it even goes bigger, and they're all treaties.
Right.
Supreme laws of the land, except for the natives.
Right.
We apparently, they try all different kind of ways, like they do to Leonard. Same thing, the same manipulation that they use on our trees, they use on Leonard. They change it,
Right.
whatever fits them. So where's the justice? You know, people need to realize, you know, I'm not anti this, anti that, you know, but I just want justice. You know, that's all we ask for, to be treated fairly and humanly. What does it take to be asked to be treated as a human and respect our rights? So that's, you know, an open question for the United States government, and we're waiting. We still are.
Right. It's interesting to note that the government tried to buy the Black Hills from the Lakota. I think back, what is it, 1968? They tried to give you the money.
1980. Yeah.
I'm sorry, 1980.
And the money is still in the bank somewhere.
And it's gained a tremendous amount of interest in the billions now, and the Lakota still don't want the money. Although there are some people on the res who would like to, you know, grab that money, but how far is it going to go? Where would it go? It's going to go to a lot of lawyers. So most Lakota, as I understand, want no part of the money. They want their land.
Definitely.
Yeah.
As far as I know, the Treaty Council makes that decision, and they're still upholding the treaties. And that should be our first government. The governments that are inside the reservations are imposed by the United States government. We call them the IRA government, like what's the president and like that. That's not the people's government.
Right.
But yeah, so Leonard, you know, he deserves a lot more than sitting in there. And I don't know, according to the law in the 1970s, when he was convicted, a life term was 7 years. So he got two consecutive life sentences. He's done that like 3 or 4 times now.
Chauncey, what was it like growing up? You only knew your dad as a dad for about 10 years before he was in prison. What was it like growing up with him?
Well, what I remember as a kid, he had a place.
Got a bad connection here, Chauncey. Very bad connection here.
Is that any better?
No.
Yeah. How about now?
It sounds like you're in a wind tunnel.
I don't know what happened. I could barely hear you guys a while ago.
Perhaps you should just try and call back in. Hang up and call right back in. Oftentimes that fixes the problem.
Okay.
Naturally,
Of course, you could hear him pretty well right before he's about ready to try that.
that's the way things go.
But
No, but-
once again, when I visited him in President in 2016, Jean was with me, and also Carrie Ann Boucher, who's his niece. I was amazed in what good spirits he's in. I mean, I'm sure he's glad to just see new people and talk to new people. But we talked for about 2 hours, a wide range of subjects. His interests and his knowledge of what's going on in the world is unsurpassed. He knows what's going on, and he has a great understanding of civil rights around the world, human rights around the world, the understanding of what's going on. So he's become a real figurehead for the amnesty movement, for human rights. He's become a martyr. I don't think he wanted to be a martyr, but he is at this point, and he's probably the best known Native American in the world. Unfortunately, he's in very, very poor health, and all we're asking is for a few years left of his life that he can spend with his family, spend with his grandchildren. So it's pretty simple stuff, and it's amazing that our government, which insists, the United States is the leader in human rights around the world, it just echoes false when Leonard Peltier remains in prison. You cannot make a case for us being the leader in the world of morality, of the shining beacon for all other countries. Not after the January 6th uprising, number one, and certainly not after Leonard Peltier. I mean, seriously, if he is still in prison, the Chinese are going to listen to us. The Russians are going to listen.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. I mean, why do we fancy ourselves as this great beacon of the world when we see the kind of racism and all other kinds of isms that we're capable of? The one thing about Donald Trump, he certainly exposed, the underbelly of the nation, which is good because now we know who we are and what we have to address.
Well, as Gene mentioned, there is international attention on this case, which means that there should be some international consequences. If we are to honor the treaties and the compacts and the agreements we make with other nations, we have to be equally as culpable when challenged.
Now, Chauncey's back now. Chauncey, I was asking about your dad. What was it like growing up and having him as a dad for only 10 years?
Well, from little I did spend with my father. I don't know. He seemed like a good father to me. A lot of stuff that he told me, I took under my belt, helped me make it through life. I know he was a good dad. He was a caring, good father. What little I did get to know of him,
Do you remember the time when he kind of when all of this went down, when he was on the run and so forth? Do you remember that time?
Well, yeah, I remember. I remember one time up in Canada before they extradited him. I was up there and I was selling these newspapers, and we were using the funds for everybody there that were supporting him and everything. And I remember one time I was just a kid. I was barely 10, and I was selling these papers, and I noticed these guys over there in this car watching me, and I thought, what the heck, they were over there in suits. So I went a couple blocks away, and I sat there, and I was selling these papers again, and over the other way I noticed again there was those guys again, and so I did it one more time. I went around a few more blocks, and I seen those guys for the third time. Finally I went back to the courthouse, and I remember I went up to my mother and I told her, I said, hey, I'm ready to go home. She's all, huh? Well, yeah, I got scared, And then when I went go into the courthouse, I remember one of those agents, they were taking us into this room and they were searching us. And this agent, he had my arm twisted behind my back, and I was just a little guy, man. I was crying around and stuff, and he whispered in my ear, he said, I'm going to make sure your cop killing dad never gets out of prison. And I remember some woman at the door seen this and started going, hey, what are you doing to him, and all this and that. And he pushed me over towards the door in the courthouse and shoved me in there. And I went in there and I was kind of crying around, and everybody was asking, well, what are you crying around? I told them, And just other things, like when he escaped from Long Park, I remember they were following me on the bus. I seen him on the back of the bus following me at school. I seen him at school. Just numerous things growing up, being harassed about it. People don't realize that a lot of Leonard's kids get harassed about it. I've been discriminated about it. It's just, there's been good things and there's been bad things, I worked construction all my life. I was a retired construction worker at a local 296 out of Portland. And I remember one time the superintendent came up to me on the job and said, hey, are you related to that Leonard Peltier? And I said, yeah, it was my father, And being Native in the Union, they kept me working a lot of years. And so, there's been downfalls and there's been good points with it, A lot of supporters really support Leonard. You can always tell. Some supporters have their own agendas, and some really support Leonard and support his family. It's crazy.
Do you and Gene Do you and Gene still feel that there's any kind of government surveillance of your activities? I know, Gene, you're extremely active. I mean, you're everywhere. I mean, do you feel
Well, they have been there all my life, and I'm really used to it, you know.
Yeah.
They came into our home in Rapid City, raced to the city, broke into our home and took us down to the courthouse before the grand jury. My brother was only 10, maybe 11 then, yeah.
This was during the after the shootout?
Yeah, after the shootout. And then, I mean, I live in Rapid City most of my life, so I really don't care. You know, I'm not scared of them. I'm not scared to speak out against them because I talk the truth. And if they want to pick on me, that's fine. But, you know, we stood for a lot of things and I'll never change. I'm 60 years old, you know. Can't change now.
Right.
And when you tell the truth, it gives you more power, you know.
Yeah.
It gives you strength.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of people that pray for him every day, you know. It's like a lot of our people that have gone on, you know, before us stood strong for him, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The same as we're doing. And if they do, you know, I think they have more better things to be, you know, surveilling people like me or whoever. They should actually do some real good in the community.
Well,
a lot going on.
Do you think that the government's worried that he stands as a rallying point for Native Americans? You're afraid of the power that he may have?
Sorry.
Do you think that the government's afraid of the power that Leonard might generate? He disappeared.
Well,
Sorry, my dog was.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I think that they're definitely scared. They're always scared, you know. And I'll give you the situation with the water protectors and Standing Rock, unarmed water protectors. Why were they so stomped down on? That's the same thing they did with the American Indian movement. And if you look way back in 1890 when the ghost stamps was going, that's basically why people were being hunted down. When the U.S. cavalry attacked a Sundance camp up there where at Greasy Grass, what they also call the Battle of Little Bighorn, where Custer, you know, was killed. That was a spiritual camp they attacked. So they have a history of attacking our spirituality. And, you know, it just seems to be their thing. But when people continue to resist, if you resist the church, you know, and the church has a lot of history with colonizing our people. I mean, they took kind of like the arm of the cavalry, in other words, you know.
When you look at standing,
going on, colonization is a tool they're using, not necessarily the surveillance.
right. I know at Standing Rock, there's a real example of what the government is capable of. Here you have unarmed Native Americans and white people as well, and all kinds of people protesting for water rights so that the pipeline doesn't go underneath, it doesn't go through burial grounds, doesn't go underneath the Missouri River. Everyone's protesting, everybody's unarmed, they're nonviolent. What does the government do? They come out with the National Guard, heavily armed SWAT teams, turn on water hoses on the protesters.
Rubber bullets, real bullets.
People were killed there. And then you look what happens on January 6th.
Yeah.
And you look at the response there. I mean,
that's how it is. It's all lopsided.
The nation is upside down. It truly is.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you attack people who are protesting for clean water? I mean, it absolutely makes no sense at all.
And if you've seen some of the investigations afterwards of the organizations like the Blackwater that were part of the, they were actually leading the local cops, the DAPO security,
Right.
and they labeling us as jihad terrorists or something. They connected us somehow. You know, of course, they did that before. They named us militants and guerrillas, you know, during a time that, you know, when they it was one of the massive manhunts before that other guy that was hiding out in the wilderness. I can't remember his name, but that was one of the largest one that came to Ogala.
Well, this is how they try to define things. Where before we came on the air, I was reading an editorial in the Chicago Tribune, which coincided with the possibility that Obama might pardon Leonard. And it's still this complete disconnect. They're saying that the agents were killed in cold blood while responding to a, as if it was a house call, a police call, regular police call. They were killed in cold blood. This is how this is still perceived. There's a, it's willful ignorance. It's willful ignorance. It's stupidity. Not willing to look at the facts. Not willing to understand. It's keeping their tunnel vision as far as this case is concerned.
Government's very good at disinformation. I mean,
Yeah.
we've seen it on so many different levels, internationally as well as domestically.
Right.
And this has all the classic hallmarks of government knows they did something wrong, so they're going to continue to paint a picture in hopes that that's how history books will be written.
Right. And
Well, in 1977, it was 1976 or 77, we had a thing called the Citizen Review Commission on the FBI, where they brought different people together. I know I testified there, and it was all based on, they used that program called COINTELPRO, right?
right.
They had some of the Black Panthers, they targeted their movement, they targeted some Honeywell workers, and who else was there? There's about 4 or 5 different organizations that had people come there.
And they always said that the FBI infiltrators were always the craziest ones of all. You know?
Yeah.
They were the ones that let's do this, let's get crazy, let's get violent.
It seems as though they're not concerned with the fact that Leonard likely was not the actual shooter. They just want somebody to hang all this on.
Well,
go ahead. They've as much as admitted that. That's the truth.
Every package needs a bow, and Leonard is the bow on the package.
And like I said, before that shootout, at least 60 people were killed on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation that were never to date ever investigated. And just, well, to me, and then 2 agents that weren't even supposed to be there for whatever reason, according to laws, even their own laws, it has to be a 10-top crime. Stealing somebody's cowboy boots does not classify them or even give them, give them any kind of reason to be there.
And the fact is the agents were following that car onto the Jumping Bull Ranch. They described it. They said they were looking for a red and white truck, and the car they were following was a red truck. So all of their information was wrong. They were wrong in all counts. They did not announce themselves. They had no business following this guy. They had no orders to follow Jimmy Eagle. They had no orders whatsoever to follow him. It was a random thing, and they paid for it. And in an era of very high tensions on the Pine Ridge Reservation.
No, unmarked car, definitely.
Right, exactly.
Definitely. And like I said, it was a lot that, if you wanted to survive, you had to have a gun. People were scared to go there. We're Native people. I'm not from that reservation, but we had to be prepared.
Right.
Go on Pine Ridge, the things that were going on, it didn't matter, but you hardly ever seen any non-Native people down there.
The problem, it's just a danger. We think that people will forget about Leonard. This is why people keep talking about it, because people do forget. There's so many people who have never heard of the Leonard Peltier case. So I encourage everybody, if you've never heard of it, see the video that Jamie was talking about at the top of the show, Incident at Ogala, which was produced by Robert Redford and narrated by him. Jean is in this movie, and she talks about her experiences in that. It is an outstanding film, and it gives you a sketch of what happened. Also, go to whoisleonardpeltier.info. You can read all about his case, read about all the people who already support him, and find out how you can get involved. And once again, purchase his artwork, because it's outstanding, and it goes towards his defense fund. So it's always that case. People forget so quickly today. Our news cycle goes so damn fast. This shooting that happened yesterday is going to be old news by Friday. But there's certain things we have to keep in the news, and this kind of injustice is number one.
I'm just amazed that he's able to produce artwork in max security prison. I guess
It's been a problem. Sometimes they withhold his painting supplies. Sometimes he's in solitary, he can't do anything. I don't know if he's painting as much as lately, but I know he's been very prolific over the years. So he's got a tremendous amount of artwork out there that you can see on the internet. Just Google Leonard Peltier artwork and you can see what he's got.
And a lot of the references to that, in fact, a post that Malcolm had made, I think even last month, with some examples of the artwork and a lot of the links and stuff like that, is on my page right now for easy reference for people.
Malcolm, you've mentioned a couple times that Leonard's in poor health. I don't want to probe too deeply, but is there something you can elaborate with?
Well, he has prostate problems. I think Gene, it's no secret. What is it? Gene and Chauncey can probably tell you what's going on with him.
Well, he's a diabetic for one. And one part is that, with the diabetic leads to deeper problems. Not only being a diabetic and his eyes, he's having problems with his eyes. He has I think it's something to do with his hips. And not only that, he has a heart problem. He has an aneurysm.
Yeah, he has a very serious heart problem, which could be fatal if it's not taken care of.
Yeah, so he has several. It's just that for a diabetic to get well, I mean, you have to have the proper food and the proper monitoring. I don't know what they do, but my sister was also in there. And they do the very basic. I mean, she almost died a couple of times and the inmates had to fight for her to get to a hospital. I mean, I don't know how it is where he's at, but I mean, that's the kind of thing that he don't even get to any other medical care that's beyond like a nurse, maybe. I don't know.
And also there's the threat of COVID. He has a very compromised immune system. And there were so many people that were, let out of prison. Michael Cohen, Trump's attorney, man, he got out real quick, when the COVID threat came around, and a few people got out. Many appeals were made to the prison and to the federal prison department to let him out of jail because of COVID. Did not happen.
Yeah, even though I think they made a memorandum where they could release prisoners with pre-existing conditions, and people read that as federal prisoners, but a lot of them were not released, and a lot of them got sick.
Yeah, sure did.
Pre-existing, and they even defined which would have been diabetics, and heart problems.
Clearly would have been a factor. Being at that time last year is still 76, so there's just no value keeping someone like that away. Now, as far as being an elder of your people, what does it mean to the community to lose someone like an elder or have someone imprisoned like that? Doesn't it poison the vision of your youth when they see someone improperly treated like this? And a system that just simply wants to close its eyes to it?
Yeah, anytime grandpa's not around, it's really sad. And I'm sure Chauncey can tell about that. He's real close family, but our elders, we look up to them for teaching and support and just being. We've lost so many communities this year to COVID that it's outrageous. I mean, we were hit the worst and the hardest. I lost two, my mother-in-law and my kids' father to COVID, and it was just like that whole part of the kids' life is taken. The grandchildren. So there's a definite hurt within the communities when elders are not part of the thing. You have to have them to talk about the history, and they have the more patience than the parent does. Grandma will take more time than the mother.
Well, Chauncey was talking about going different places and telling the story. That's that, keeping that oral tradition going. You may not have books written like other schools do, but you have a tradition that tells the story the way that you remember it. and that's important to be able to preserve.
Yeah.
Chauncey, isn't that why you go out and do it, to make sure that you keep that story alive?
Yes, I do. To keep the story going about Leonard, educating people on his case. A lot of young people don't know about Leonard's case, and with TikTok out there and all the stuff these youngsters do nowadays, we need them educated on Leonard's case. You know, look what they did to Trump there when he thought he had all those tickets sold. That was those youngsters on that TikTok. These guys, they know how to do this stuff, and that's what Kevin Sharp's asking. We really need stuff like that to call and support the White House to get this new administration support Leonard. You know, there's a lot of good points, I believe, with this new administration that could possibly send Leonard home. You know, Kevin did say that he did get one of his COVID shots, and I'm hoping that he gets his other one. I just, even if my father don't get out and I never get to see him or talk to him, which I will, I'll go see him. But that's all he needs is just, you know, it's one of the biggest rights violation cases in history and one of the longest held political prisoners in the United States. And this has been way too long wronged for taxpayers, even paying for his wrongfully incarceration for all these years. I mean, that's took a lot of taxpayer dollars away, took this man's life away. There's just so many wrongs with it that, you know, it needs to be fixed. He needs to be going home. He needs some good, proper health care. He's got grandkids that he's never even seen. You know, I don't know my father. That's a lot of me and him bump heads. You know, he don't know me and I don't know him. He's been locked up 45 years of my life. I just turned 55 in November. So, I mean, you know, he's been robbed and I've been robbed. My sisters, my brother's been robbed. His sisters, his you know, immediate family, his mom, you know, his whole family's been robbed on this issue. And it's a wrong that needs to be fixed, and he needs to go home.
America does seem like we're wrapped into a blanket of correcting the ills of the past right now, whether it's taking down Confederate statues or emancipating Michael Thompson from prison or perhaps even, you know, Leonard. It's possible.
You know, so many of these veterans, when I'd go places, I was in Florida and a lot of these veterans came up on the motorcycles and stuff and said, hey, you know, signed his petition, said that ain't why they went and fought and died for this country for the wrongful incarceration of people like Leonard. I remember 3 police officers when I was in Florida came around, and the one sergeant, he goes, is this guy still in prison? And I didn't know what was going to happen. You know, they come around to my table and the sergeant, he's all, is this guy still in prison? I go, yeah, he's still in prison. He goes, man, I've been following this case for 20 years. I'll sign this guy's petition. And I was kind of like, huh? You know, and then the other 2 guys signed it. I mean, I've got friends that I grew up with. You know, I grew up 25 miles west of Portland, Oregon. I didn't grow up on the reservation. I've been on the street since I was 14. I had to get my butt out there and work, you know. My uncles told me, if this is the world you live in today, Chauncey, don't forget our culture, our way of our people. But if you're going to survive and provide for your family, you're going to have to get your ass out there and work, because nobody's going to hand you nothing. So that's what I did, you know. And growing up through my whole life, a lot of times I'd go to events and I wouldn't tell people I was Leonard's son. I would just go there, watch and listen. And I've always supported my father. You know, a lot of times he told me to stay out of a lot of this. A couple times I got in trouble. The DA and the police wanted to lock me up for the rest of my life because who my father was. Luckily, attorneys, I always had enough sense and had a good enough job to where I hired a good attorney, and I always got a good fair shake, you know. So that's all I ever asked is my father, you know, if they would go by their own rules, he would be home, you know. That's all we've ever asked, you know. Is this is their justice system. they don't brag about justice for all no more. They don't brag about innocent until proven guilty no more. Nowadays, it's how much money you got or what kind of connections you got, you know? So, I mean, those days are gone. It's how big of a checkbook you got, you know?
But also, Chauncey, you make a very, very good point about the youth and the power of the youth, you know, the TikTok generation, if you will. The fact is, somebody made this point the other day. I said, geez, do you see any kind of big youth movement in the Republican Party where kids are just getting excited about the Republican candidates? They just can't wait to vote for these people? No, they're not. Okay. We have tremendous power among the youth. And if we can galvanize them, if we can show them, you know, some of the injustices and harness their energy, things can change.
Yeah.
You know, so good point. Good point.
Hey, so just on that note,
Definitely agree. Yeah.
well, I can just throw it in there. Based out of Ypsilanti, the Native Youth Alliance is having a freedom campaign full moon prayer walk Sunday, March 28th. And I guess go to the Facebook page to get more details because that's all that's posted there. He also mentioned something that's interesting. On June 7th, Leonard Peltier Freedom Ride 2021, a horseback journey from Nebraska to Washington, D.C.
Wow.
That's a hell of a hike. Wow.
They've done one
Right
almost
on.
every year now.
What'd you say, Gene?
I said they've done it before.
Yeah.
Almost every year, the horseback ride. And this is another one. I just heard about it. Well, they've been talking in the planning, but the official dates. And we have so many people that have connected to Leonard over the years, and they kind of like do their own things. So we have many things that are going on, and all we try to do is keep on top of it and try. We need to just support each other, and there's so many. It's really powerful. When I went to United Nations, you know, there was a lot of support there for Leonard, and we have, you know, or up here the Ochete Shakoan tribes. Most of them are in full support. I mean, most of them have written letters of support, which is the 7 nations of the Lakota. And all of them do support it, or the people do.
Right. Well, here's,
there's a distinct.
Here's just a partial list. The United Nations High Commissioner on Human Rights, the United Nations Working Group on Indigenous Populations, the European Parliament, the Belgian Parliament, the Italian Parliament have all passed resolutions in favor of his clemency. The International Federation of Human Rights, Amnesty International, the Kennedy Memorial Center for Human Rights, the Committee of Concerned Scientists, the National Lawyers Guild, the American Association of Jurists. All of these organizations are backing his release.
Yeah, that's a partial list. Yeah, I know there's the association. Oh wait, no. God, there's so many names.
Wait a minute, Dalai Lama earlier too.
The tribes.
Yeah.
They're lobbying. But yeah, on and on. You know, you have. In fact, the Ogala Sioux tribe declared June 26th as Leonard Peltier Day.
Right.
So that's where it happened at. So that tribe in full support of his clemency and freedom, you know.
It's kind of ironic, you know, that the June 26th is the day after the anniversary of Custer's demise at the Little Bighorn. It was kind of interesting. June 25th is Victory Day, is a Lakota holiday, and the following day is kind of a day of sadness, you know, though that's a holiday as well. So yeah, kind of interesting.
So Gene, you mentioned that you have some hope or you're putting more hope now into the international courts to try to effect change somehow. What is that? Is there a legitimate mechanism there that can be triggered through the international courts that could lead to really getting involved?
Well, developing that, it's been developed since way back when they first went to Geneva in 1977. Leonard Peltier's his case has been brought up everywhere. And I don't know, I guess he'll get justice when we get justice. We haven't gotten justice yet, you know. They still honor, well, just recently they rescinded the Medal of Honor that were given to the soldiers that wiped out the people on Wounded Knee. That's how far back that, you know.
Has that
These
been
dark-
finalized yet? Have they taken away those medals yet?
Well,
Not
they
yet?
received them through South Dakota State. I
Yeah,
don't know if that's on the federal level.
I
so
would be very,
still-
yeah,
You know,
be surprised if that happens. Yeah.
yeah.
We did, because that
So,
would be,
yeah, it's a continual process, but you know, all we can do is keep trying, and we'd be open for any kind of suggestions. But
Right.
United Nations has been one of the platforms we've used. Like he said, Amnesty International has put out support of Leonard as a political prisoner. All those different, you know, parliaments and European councils, they've done a lot too. I mean, a lot of people put their word out, let's say, but what can they actually do, or should they be doing to
Right.
make this more? I think what has to go on is we probably have to take them to court, you know, international court. Why haven't we been able to get into that court?
right.
The atrocities against our people are numerous and continued. So until that is being addressed, you know, Leonard's case is right alongside with all those other things that have happened to our people.
Well, you know, it's true, because the government and the United States tries to minimize this horrible history. A few years back, the government tried to formally apologize for the Wounded Knee massacre. Now, how do you accept an apology for the massacre of 300 people? There is no such apology that could ever correct that atrocity. So
Yeah.
the government has this Pollyanna-like attitude for Native Americans. Oh, well, yeah, it was bad back then, but things are good now. You know, it's that kind of thing. Let's not worry about it now. Let's all get along. For example, you know, Thanksgiving. Well, let's all celebrate Thanksgiving. It's time for us all to get together, ignoring what Thanksgiving means to Native Americans. It's always like, let's not, we don't want to hear about it. Let's be happy. So maybe if we extend an apology to the Lakota for killing all their people on, you know, on a very, very cold day in December 1890, things will be okay if we just apologize. And
Well, not reconcilable, as you point out, Malcolm. That's like that's one incident in many, including things that are being talked about that have been going on just recently.
right.
When we talk about Leonard's case, one thing I think is important, if we want to achieve clemency, clemency has to be the most attractive option. So if we have a less attractive option, that would be going to court and unsealing all those thousands of pages of documents that they've been trying to hide. Especially, it would be difficult to explain why they don't reveal those to an international court, where they'd have to face rebukes planet-wide for their failure to do so. So, I mean, I love the international court as an attractive option, but is that currently being pursued, Gene? Are we on that pathway?
We haven't gotten any support towards that. We've been working towards it, but as we work towards stuff like that, other people tear us down. You know what I mean? It's like you have manipulation of different people that tend to try to undermine us. But we have tribal governments behind this. So hopefully they have more power in this upcoming administration. They all support Leonard's freedom, not every one of them, but I'm sure if we all took our time and asked for support, it'd be there. But there's like over how many tribes? You know, most of them all came to Standing Rock, so that was real uplifting that could happen. We had a Peltier camp there, you know, and it's just part of getting justice. None of our people are unhoused. So many are on being attacked by medical problems, mental. I mean, we're just suffering a lot. And the reservations, they haven't been upgraded for generations. I mean, people are living in the same house they're built like 70 years ago. There has been no upbringing hardly on every reservation I can see, mostly states, unless you own a really
So if you go to Pine Ridge and drive those roads. Those are federal roads, by the way. They are the worst roads in the country. You are taking your life in your hand. And you know why? Because they didn't build the roadbed as deep as all the other roadbeds all over the country. They built these roadbeds maybe a foot, 2 feet deep, not enough. They crack every damn winter, and believe me, it is dangerous as hell. By the way, federal roads. Interesting that Washington, D.C. has one of the highest median salaries in the country. Everybody's on the government dole. Everybody's getting paid by the government. You go to Pine Ridge, pretty much the same thing. Everybody needs government assistance, and it's the poorest place in the nation. So there you are, right there.
Right.
Priorities.
Right. That's some of the richest land in the nation. And they make jobs everywhere for everybody, but why can't they make some jobs on the reservation for some of our people? I mean, a lot of us want to work and provide for our people too, and I mentioned that to my brother Waha one time. I said, if he got a job around there, he had to keep it. But like me growing up in the city, I might have 4 jobs in one day. I picked who I wanted to work for, and that's it. Is they want to keep us poor. They want to keep a lot of the income in the Pine Ridge and stuff. I hear is around $6,000. Well, a lot of people make that more in a month. Right. You know what I mean? So why ain't they putting jobs or letting us get some jobs in there for our people so we could proceed and provide for our families like we all want to too? They make jobs everywhere all over the country for people.
It's true. People don't realize that on Pine Ridge, there really isn't any industry whatsoever. There's no railroad going into Pine Ridge. There's no industry of any kind. There are no buses going in there. In order to have a job, you need a car. Car needs gas.
Exactly.
It's a completely circuitous living that you're living, completely circular. You're living to pay your gas and going on and on and on. It's very, very difficult to live on the reservation.
They're set up to fail. Exactly, Malcolm. You know what I mean? They just like you said, the car insurance is so high. Having a car to go to a job, it's just all right there. It's they don't have the same opportunities.
Wouldn't it be a beautiful thing if Leonard was the thing that brought tribes together, that brought the First Nations together, that everybody unified, in addition to Standing Rock, but also to help Leonard's case, and that once that was resolved successfully, that unification could build into something that would coalesce into a movement that actually would have some political power and could actually properly express the concerns that we're hearing today and get some damn things done about it. Wouldn't it be?
That's a lot of things like in the cities.
Is that they've actually legalized marijuana. So we're looking at that, and also they lifted the gag order and the thing against Alex White Plume for growing hemp, which they had him on for 10 years. They would not let him grow hemp. Now that's been lifted, and marijuana's been legalized. So we're hoping that there'll be some changes coming from that, and we have the land base.
I should mention that when you mentioned the White Plumes, Deborah White Plume, of course, who passed on in November, very, very powerful activist on the Pine Ridge Reservation, very involved in the hemp movement. She passed on, and she is in the movie as well. She was one of the people who was wounded in the shootings on the Pine Ridge Reservation during that time. So she's also in the movie, Deborah White Plume, and she talked about her experience of being shot in her own home.
Here in Michigan, we have cannabis dispensaries on tribal lands. The Bay Mills Indian Group has done a great job up in the Sault Ste. Marie, but also several other tribal entities throughout the state have put dispensaries on their own property. So at least in that particular manner, here in our state, we're seeing maybe some success coming to some places where it has.
When we interviewed the Bay Mills, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chauncey.
I want to say that as a retired construction worker, I was a workaholic, alcoholic all my life. I've been sober for 9 years. I would way preferred to smoke weed, but I couldn't because of my job. Alcohol led me to getting in trouble. I've had some few DUIs and a few fist fights, being only native growing up in a white town, But once I quit drinking and I started smoking, boy, my whole world turned around. I wasn't getting in trouble no more. You know, it just, and the elders told me if I was using it like medicine, you know, for a lot of my PTSD and a little ADHD I got, that it was okay. So I mean, I think it's a medicine if we use it in the right, proper way. Myself, you know I use it like that. You
On
know,
a personal level,
so
sure.
I support that one. I support that. I seen that article I was reading one time on Facebook, and it was one of our chiefs that go to Sundance, because I Sundance with Gene does, and he was saying we didn't need all these people coming in here. We know how to do this ourselves. We need some backers to go in there and support those brothers like that, and let them do that themselves, so that they can make those jobs for our people out there. You know. For they could do that, we could have that, not some corporation come in and feed us peanuts, you know, so our people could do it.
When we interviewed the people from Bay Mills, they were discussing ultimately, they also have, and in fact, I think a lot of the resources that be going into the uplifting their new venture into cannabis is from revenue that they've generated through casinos. And ultimately, they discussed having cannabis smoking in casinos. So, you know, be attractive for a lot of people to show up and do that. And you mentioned that there's possible cannabis and hemp revenue coming, or the beginning of that getting started to help out. Is there the same type of like casino or opportunity available? Has that gone on at all to help generate any revenue?
I don't know. I just seen the article on that, and that's what they were saying in there. But I support it, man. I'm rooting for those guys. I'd like to see that get going for them.
Well, Pine Ridge opens its first dispensary. There's a lot of controversy. There are some people moving in on Pine Ridge who've also been seem to be persona non grata on the Navajo reservation as well. They showed up in Pine Ridge. They don't seem to be welcome there anymore either. So there's some controversies. People are trying to move in and try to, I don't know, do their thing. I don't know enough about the case, but some of these people don't seem to have the best background. Go ahead,
the Ogala Sioux tribe did pass a resolution that the only weed that can be sold has to be done by a tribe member that lives on the reservation, to keep the corporate people out.
Good for you.
Right.
You know,
Good.
Yeah. Get on.
I remember when we went down to Jamaica, when they were getting their thing underway, we advised the same thing: keep it to yourselves. Don't license it out. Don't let the corporations come in. Make sure the tribal members, make sure it's Lakota cannabis all the way. You know, everybody should have a greenhouse. You know, everybody. Seriously. All you need is, I mean, there is so much sun on Pine Ridge. It would be the ideal place for greenhouses. I swear to God, it is just beautiful weather for greenhouse growing.
And once revenue is generated, then you can do road repairs, and you can do infrastructure improvements, and you can bring up extra power lines and all those other things that they should have already done decades ago.
Pushing for renewable energy. You know, we need housing. We need alternative energy, some that will survive. Like last week, there was a major snowstorm and the electricity went out. So how many thousands of people had no heat, you know? I mean, we already know that happens every year. So we should be prepared. Every home should have another form or should not have electric as their first way of keeping their home.
and propane costs money. You know, to keep things going.
Like maybe solar energy, they have solar furnaces, they have wind, they have wood, you know, a combination, alternative energy.
Remember, Pine Ridge could be the Saudi Arabia of wind power. There is so much wind on Pine Ridge, you wouldn't believe it. You know, so if wind turbines would make a great deal of sense.
Definitely. So get the right people that aren't thinking so much of their own, you know, where the BIA had so much control, let's say in the 70s, they were promoting a lot of things that the government wanted, but now we need to look at what our people need. you know. And the tribal governments are not like the Dick Wilson days. They're more of a, you know, for the people now.
Yeah.
Which I guess can change only with time, you know. And with the marijuana, having the power to be able to, that was another very good part of changing the economy on the reservation. So we'll see what happens on that. And, you know, it's the same thing with justice for Leonard Peltier. You know, if the United States government went to court, how many nations would actually be pointing at them as, you know, genocidal manipulators, you know? I know we're not the only ones that have been underneath their sword or whatever. You know, Lakota Nation, Dene Nation, how they handled the pandemic in the very beginning, that's sad. That is very atrocious. You know, it just proves how we've been handled all these years by them. You know, we're handled by them. But we have the brain power to do our own thing. You know what I mean? And they've kept that. That's one of the things that they don't want. They don't want people to think. We have the people that are educated now. There's no longer a language barrier where they can tell us one thing and do another. They have to be responsible now, more responsible. So hopefully by making them responsible, let Leonard out, because of our documentation that we have in releasing those next pages, I'm interested to see what's going to happen, what's in those that they're holding on for, what, 40 years now to release. There's something in there that they're hiding.
There is.
Well, what I'd really like to do is get Chauncey to give us a final couple of thoughts, have an opportunity to say whatever's on his mind, and then we'll give Gene the same opportunity. Chauncey, if you'd like to.
Yeah, you know, I'm pretty happy to see Deb Holland in there, up there. I'm hoping that some of these treaties will get honored now. Some will get some of our land back, and I think it's just finally the first time in history, and it's a good thing for people. She's a Leonard Peltier supporter. I think it's a good thing for our people that she's in there. And I always want to make sure that I tell people that Native Americans, we're a government inside the government of our own. We, as tribal citizens, we have something they've been trying to take from us since they came up with this deal. And a lot of the blood quorums they designed to make us go extinct, you know. But if we would get a hand on that and get together, and we could be running a lot more, because we're the true citizens of this country. We're the originals. And with Deb in there, maybe they'll start honoring some of these treaties and stuff in there, and our people could start properly getting some of the resources that they've been promising us for 500 years. You know, a lot of our people just want to be educated, do good for their families, and be providers, you know, but they make it to where we can't. That's why I say about the jobs on the reservations. I would like to see jobs on the reservations so that a lot of our people have the same opportunities. I would like to see a lot of this Rapid City, like Gene talks about, and I read in the news, and I seen when I go to Rapid City, I got a concealed weapons permit. And being Leonard's son, believe me, I'm scared. And it ain't from my people. It's from the justice system that I'm scared of. It's not from the bad people. It's from the justice system, you know? So that's what I got to say. And I want to thank you guys for having me on here. And I always want to thank you for the work you guys do for my father. And you guys always have my prayers and my support. So if I can help you in any way, You guys know how to get a hold of me, and I appreciate it. Well,
Thanks, Chauncey.
Thanks for joining us.
Chauncey
Really
Peltier.
appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Gene, before we get to you, I just have to ask you, that is a picture of Leonard on the wall behind you. Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
Right there? Yeah, I've been staring at him the whole show. Every time you speak, it's
Helps. Good reminder.
yeah, it certainly is.
So,
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, right now, I think yesterday we had an incident that happened in July with President Trump coming, or Governor Nome hosting him at the Mount Rushmore with fireworks. So the people blocked the highway going up there, and they were all charges, all these weird charges. Something like Nick Tilson of the Indian Collective had like some real weird charges, like felonies, because they had a shield that was taken from one of the cops. And there's a really cool picture. I just love it. And they're all, they got their shield back, but instead of, they marked the X over the police thing, where it said police on the shield, and they put land back. But all their charges were dropped, and everybody knew that it was a bogus charge, But that's the kind of stuff that we have to go through. Why do we have to them manipulate their laws to put somebody in jail because they don't like them, or we don't agree with them, or they don't like us because of stereotypes? So I guess education, and hopefully some sort of a world court, because we have the evidence. And I think that the United States government needs to acknowledge that the wrong that they've done to our nations, not just one, not just Leonard, but there's lists of people in prison because they have no access to justice. And like Chauncey said, you come into this town, I mean, and you get picked up in South Dakota, it's just like, and you're a native, you might as well just plan on going to prison, really. That's how outrageous it is. And I've seen it, I've experienced it with my children. My family has been imprisoned, and we just know that story too much. And Leonard, and then I've seen the courts, how they acted. One Benson in Fargo, he was outrageous. He was like an Indian hater, just like Trump, just like Nome. Until we get rid of these people that act in hate, we're not going to get much change. So we really need to try to organize our people, and that's what I've been doing. That's why I never really quit. And if it might not be, standing at the front line and Standing Rock, cooking for people, whatever we do, it's to bring them, to let them know that they actually have power. So we have power, but organizing it and getting our nations directly behind Leonard, which has happened a lot of times. I mean, but every time, a new administration or something new comes up, we have to do it again. And the changes are always continual. But the one thing that we do have is our treaty, and that cannot be ignored. And there's violations of that treaty in Leonard's case. One thing is jurisdiction, and they should never been there. And the manipulation and all the laws that they broke trying to build a case, they should be charged with that. And the education, like for Lakota history and our history with the United States government, starting with Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull, the Dakota 38, that was the largest mass execution in the United States. A lot of people don't know our history, and they don't understand why the things that we've been through, and it's been manipulated to make us look like the enemy. But I think Leonard deserves a chance to be home with his people, hug his grandchildren, and just enjoy the little bit of life he has left. Being 76 years old, I mean, that's older than a lot of people I know. So I just pray, and everybody really prays for Leonard and our people. And hopefully we can be in a circle with him. So we'll continue whatever things that happen in his name and his honor. And hopefully he can get out. And by doing these podcasts and whatever, appreciate that. And I hope that someone learned, a little something about him or about our nation that they could take home. And, we're just coming from the heart, we're just like everybody else. So understanding that, we've made a lot of allies because they've had similar things, especially other natives. They've experienced it with different people. They may not have big names, like Leonard's name's been up there. The atrocities are numerous behind him, but there are a lot of Native people inside our prisons that can't be forgotten either. And just because they're there because they couldn't get a lawyer, there are a lot of people that deserve to be there too, but a lot of them just because they don't have access to justice is just beyond my mind that they're still in there. So any kind of help that we can be of assisting or images or Leonard's case, we're willing to do.
Gene, it was wonderful having you on the show today, and I really hope we have a happy update to be able to bring to our Jazz Cabbage customers in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Malcolm, I know that's a tough act to follow, but I'd love to get your thoughts too. You've really followed this case for so long, and you're so intimate with it. This has really been a wonderful revelation today. Thank you for sharing it.
Well, Gene, you were wonderful today on the show. And thank you so much for being here. Got motorcycles going by here in New York. Anyway, listen, it's been my pleasure and my honor to cover Native American issues for 30 years. And I'm doubly honored that Leonard has used many of my photos for inspiration for his artwork that he creates in prison. And you can see that on my website. Personal plug here. Yeah, but I'm just honored to be a part of this. I've made so many friends in the Native community. I think they realize that I'm trying to seek the truth and trying to seek justice on their behalf. It's truly an honor to be part of this, and I'm awed by people like Gene and Chauncey. We forget as white people, as Caucasians, as people who are somewhat privileged, how difficult it is in the world to wake up every single day. I don't wake up in the world and think that I'm white, but certainly Native Americans do. Black people say, I'm black. That's their identity is seeped in who they are because we put that on them. We make them the other. So there's still so much work to be done. We're still primitive when you get down to it. We have to recognize each other as equals. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, thank you guys too.
Right on.
We appreciate it. Thank you, Malcolm.
Yeah, we're going to revisit this issue and help to keep the discussion in the air.
Yep. I know we're a little bit over time, but Frank, go ahead, Gene. Did you have an?
I think, did we mention our website? That's the latest update. Is whoisleonardpeltier.info. And that's the International Leonard Peltier Defense Committee web.
We talked about that a couple times at the beginning, but I'm glad we had a chance to update it afterwards too. And Malcolm, what was that website for people that are interested in purchasing Leonard's artwork?
You can find his artwork at whoisleonardpeltier.info, just as Gene mentioned. But if you Google Leonard Peltier artwork, it's all over the web. There are many people selling prints of his work, and you can purchase those. But I would rather everybody go through the Leonard website, because that's where the money is going to go. Okay, it's going to go to the defense fund. So whoisleonardpeltier.info. Check out the paintings. All of them are for sale. Wonderful prints. Great things to have in your house.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Before we go, I wanted to give a chance for our regular Jazz Cabbage crew to have an opportunity just to maybe, if you feel strongly about something, reflect on it, because it's been such a powerful episode. I don't want to turn off anyone's emotions. Deborah Young,
I just think this was the most informative and riveting show that we've done to date. Seriously.
Yeah.
Gene, wow. I'm just blown away. I just don't even, I just don't even know what to say. I can't even imagine experiencing something like that as a 14-year-old. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to give it to you. I just have no words. I feel you right here. Every
Thank-
word.
But we have our people that we struggle for, truly. And Leonard's one of them. But we've been through a lot. We really have. I have
Wow.
a son and a daughter in prison, a sister. I mean,
You
and
are
it's-
one strong woman. I'll tell you what.
well,
I
someday
really admire you.
I hope to meet all you guys in person. And
That would be great. Yeah.
yeah,
Road trip.
South Dakota, here we come.
South Dakota road trip. Let's go.
Jim,
Or-
Colin, did you have something? Did you have something, Jim or Colin, you wanted to mention?
Just feel humbled and honored to be sitting here with you guys and listening to the story. And I mean, with all the international attention, you hope that momentum, and with changes occurring now in today's changing world, that something soon is going to happen that's going to be positive. So that's
Yeah.
what I'm thinking about.
Colin?
Yeah, thank you both, and Chauncey as well for being with us. And I'll definitely share it in every way I can. And I'm really humbled to be here with you.
Reverend Thompson, please.
Well, I missed most of the show. For some reason, it kept disconnecting. The screen would just freeze up on me, and then it would reconnect. So I missed a lot of what was said, but I just want to say thank you for bringing this forth about Leonard, because the more people that know what's going on, hopefully we'll get to see this man go home and be with his family before he leaves this world. And it's one of my dying wishes. One on the bucket list, probably right at the top.
Before I turn this back over to Jamie, I just want to thank you, Gene, for allowing us to be part of the protectors of your oral tradition.
thank you.
And
Appreciate it.
Participate.
Anytime. You want to do another show? Anytime. We're open.
Thank you.
Aho, Jeannie. Aho.
Yep.
We will definitely revisit this issue periodically. And Malcolm, I really appreciate you kind of like orchestrating a lot of this and getting Gene and Chauncey to come on and directing this conversation. It turned out to be really informative. It framed things in a way to help. It doesn't, you can't really match up to it, but it helps to demonstrate the magnitude of things going on there on here. Obviously, Leonard's issue is huge, and it's one thing of many.
Right.
Like,
Once again, thank you for airing this. I know generally it's cannabis is the theme of the show. I think it's great you spent 2 hours doing this. So thanks very much.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
all
you,
three of you.
Again, we appreciate all of our viewers, whether you're listening on Spotify, Alexa, or any of those streaming services, or whether you're watching this video on our Facebook or YouTube channels. Please make sure that you share, like, and tell other people the story. That's how we win.
Thank you, everybody. Really.
thank you. Jazz Cabbage Cafe, everybody. Thank you very much.
Have a great evening.
Bye.
Night.